score. I have to question, is having 3 martinis too much? Well, if you ask the question, that means it's probably too much.
Hello once again to Yes, I'm Still Sober with John Rabin. This is episode 24. Hello. I hope everyone's doing all right. Hope you're having a good week. I don't know if I sound differently to you. I sound differently to me. I sound a little hoarse, like I'm getting sick, but I really don't think I'm getting sick. I think what happened is last week I bought a new vape that hits really well. Like, it's really good, and I think that I've been overusing it, and I've been fucking up my throat. I think that's what happened. So I'm gonna drink some water is what I'm gonna do. But yeah, so funny little moment. Funny to me, not necessarily to the guy working at the counter at the vape shop. Definitely a vape bro, that guy. And I just bought the thing, and it uses like reusable pods. And in order to refill the reusable pods, there's like a little flap on it. And then if you've got like a bottle of fluid with like this needle, thin like nozzles so that it fits in there. So you're pulling it out, and then you're filling it up, and then you're loading it all. And I just went, man, this is a whole lot like preparing to do drugs. Is what I said. Because it really reminded me of like getting your gear ready when you're doing heroin. It's a little bit of a process, and I kind of laughed about it, and he kind of looked at me and he goes, huh? And I went, oh, right. That's right. Maybe I don't have to say everything I think. Did I make you uncomfortable? All right, my bad. I'm just saying it reminded me of doing heroin. That's all I'm saying. And not necessarily in a negative way. It wasn't triggering. It just was like, oh, you're prepping. It's the fun aspect of doing drugs where you prepare shit, which is a real thing. So, in a related manner, actually everything, I think that's the whole idea of the podcast that I don't always follow, but I thought this week I wanted to do a particular thing, a special edition. It's not really a special edition, a theme. I have a theme. I have a thing that I'm going to do this week, which is called So You're Going to Rehab. Now this is going to be for a very specific group of people. Maybe 2 people listening to this, but I mean, I think it's important. Also, maybe it might be informative to people who have no intention. You don't know. Maybe you will go to rehab one day. Hope. No, don't do that. But I thought I would do based on what I remember, and just kind of to prepare people. Because I had a friend who went into a treatment recently, and they were really like, they had a lot of fear about it. And it was a combination of not knowing what to expect, but also not knowing what to expect for themselves without having any kind of coping mechanism to escape trauma and bullshit that they were dealing with. But part of it was like, I don't know what the fuck's going to go on in there, because people don't really talk about what actually happens in a rehab. And the thing is that what actually happens in a rehab is a lot of boring shit. It's really not. It's like group therapy stuff. You sit and you share and you listen to other people share. And there's lots of reading. There's lots of things there's lots of homework. It's not exciting, I'll say that. It's just something to get your learn on. But I wanted to do a few things. I wanted to just spend the episode today, just kind of going over a few things, that just so you have kind of a basic, and it may not even pertain to you. Like, these are just things that I experienced with the 2 treatment centers that I went to. One being county run, which was, and the other one being a private rehab. So I figure we'll do that. That sounds good. Okay, so to start off, I would say first, should you go to rehab? Most people, it's not much of a choice, really, I think. But should you go to this rehab specifically that you're going to? I would say, first off, make sure the one you're going to is at least 45 days or 60 days. 90-day rehabs are the best, I would say. Because the longer that you're able to be away and work on yourself, the better. 30-day rehabs to me are kind of bullshit. I don't think it's long enough. And it's just kind of this, and it goes back to talking about forming new habits takes longer, can take 45 to 60 plus days. So it's just the longer that you can work on yourself and be away from your environment and your old habit patterns, the better. So I hopefully, not like there's a lot of choice financially. If you can get into any of them on your own, like either through a grant or maybe you have a problem and you also have money, which is crazy to me that you'd be able to do that, because most people who have money are like, well, I don't have a problem. See, shows money. So, but if you're able to get in, hopefully the one you're getting into is not 30 days. Hopefully it's way longer. I would say that. The other thing is that why are you going to rehab? Are you looking to quit completely? Are you looking to change? You're looking to save your life? Then yeah. But I would not go to rehab to take a break, like to slow down. And the reason is one of my personal sayings, which is rehab can kill you. Rehab is very dangerous. I mean, I recommend it if you need it, but you have to understand how dangerous rehab is. The reason is pretty basic, because an addict quits doing drugs for like 30 to 90 days, and then they lose their tolerance. And if that addict then relapses, they risk overdosing due to their regular dose they administer, or even if they think they're stepping down it, a little bit, it's still too much for their body to take because they're not used to it anymore, because you've taken a break for 3 months. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I gotta try this. The other thing about that compounds that is that when you get into a recovery program, it fucks up your high, because all of a sudden now because if you're reaching out for help, it's usually because you want to quit. And then if you relapse, the guilt really ruins your high. And because of that, honestly, if it ruins your high, it's not meeting your expectations. So what do? You do more. Therefore, putting you up back to like what I just said, which is that you're in the even higher risk area of using. And I know this personally, not just because I have dead friends who have overdosed, but also because that's what happened to me. I ended up, I quit and had some clean time doing some 12-step programs. And I did this a couple of times where I completely quit for a little bit, but then I relapsed. And then shortly after I relapsed, I OD'd and had to be revived. Like, that happened a couple of times. So, I'm not against rehab at all. I'm just like, you have to be sure. You can't be going just to, all right, well, I'll figure it out. You have to, because you are putting yourself at risk. And also, don't go because you're wanting to appease your family or your friends, or you got blindsided by an intervention or whatever. You're doing it because you're just like, well, I should do this, for them. You really, don't half-ass rehab is what I'm getting at, because it'll fuck you up if you don't do it right. So, let's get back to happier shit, not death. Anyway, so what are you going to expect in rehab? Boring stuff. Lots of thinking. That's what you're going to expect. But, and I don't know if it's going to be like this for you, but you know how prison, not that you've been to prison, but you've seen the TV, prison has like cliques. Of course, in prison, it's stay with your own kind. Racism is like, there's not a thing, you stay with your race kind of thing. It's a little bit like that, in that people tend to congregate in drug of choice. Now, some people there's a whole lot of overlapping and stuff, and they don't not talk to each other. But if you watch, I've seen it happen at both places that I went to. The heroin addicts hang out together, for example. And the reason is something I've talked about before. I may have mentioned this before. I know I have. It's 24 goddamn episodes. I've probably said it before, but heroin addicts think so highly of their fucking drug. They're like, I'm hooked on the best drug. They're just elitists, man. They're just elite. So they tend to group together, be like, yeah, you're addicted. You were hooked on heroin. Oh, just snorting it. Get the fuck out of here. They're only needle guys here. We're assholes. But you see guys who are, the meth heads playing volleyball or baseball, being very active, and old alcoholics just walking around on the track. It's just, it really is they congregate together and do like the same activities. But there is crossover, but expect that may be a thing. Don't go searching, but just expect it. Don't let it blindside you that there are cliques in a rehab. It's kind of weird. Also, there's different types of people. You also need to expect. So make sure you find a group of people to hang out with. Make sure you're hanging out with people who appear and say that they're looking to quit, like that they're genuine. Because there's a whole lot of people in rehab. There's like Fed cases. People who are there because they're drug dealers, and this is them avoiding going to prison. So they did a plea that they, because it's like their first offense or whatever, and so they're in their plea agreement for like probation and whatever, they're getting treatment. So those guys typically are just kind of laying low. So that's not necessarily somebody you want to hang out with. There are people who are there just to take a break. And there's also the repeat offenders. People who have been to 3 or 4 rehabs within the past couple of years. People who have been to several rehabs. May want to avoid hanging out. Don't avoid them, don't shun them, but just be aware of that. And I would stay away from those guys. No, on the opposite end of that spectrum, avoid being the star pupil, or avoid trying to emulate the star pupil. And you know what I mean by that, by star pupil, because there's always one or two of these guys who are just really excited to be in class and really excited to be in group and in rehab, to like, I'm going to do this and everything's going to be great and starting over. I'm doing it this time, but it's too much. they're overcompensating for some shit. And you got to watch them, because those are the ones who are either finding a way to use in rehab, because there are people that get stuff smuggled in. And that's why you have to watch some people, because you don't want to be around them and then be tempted when there's no supervision and it's just you and that other person. So yeah, you got to avoid the people taking the breaks and what else? But that's the thing. The people who are the star pupils, they're the first to go. They're the first to relapse. They're the first ones that, once they're in that in between, because like the one rehab I did, it was like half of it was you never left. It was like intensive. And then the second part was outpatient. So like you stayed there, but you went out during the day looking for work and doing whatever, and it's sort of, classes at night, and then you stayed at the rehab. And those star pupils, those are the ones who, when they go out, they're the ones that can't handle it. They're the ones who immediately are like right back into it, because, it's like they kind of knew and they were overcompensating. So try to avoid not being, I'm going to be the best rehab patient. Don't do that. Okay. Also moving along. Question method and judgment against you later. What I mean by that is, there are going to be things that happen in group therapy where people are giving you feedback and giving you shit, and they don't know you, but they do know you. Like, they know you as the addict. They just don't know you personally. So there's things it's not going to hit. And they're drug addicts too, so they don't know. They don't have a whole lot, but they can kind of, but maybe they do. Maybe they know something that you don't. Like, they see it because you're so delusional. But it's going to come off inaccurate. And some of it may be inaccurate. But the thing about it is that you don't want to completely shoot down shit while you're in the middle of it. You can do it later. Like once you've completed treatment and you're getting back into life and you start thinking about stuff and go, wait a minute, that was kind of bullshit. Yeah, all right. As a critically thinking human being, maybe at some point later, once you've built habits that you can go back and kind of go, yeah, I think that was kind of bullshit. An example of that would be the first group therapy that I did. They were asking me, because it was my first session or whatever. So they're asking me all the different drugs that I did, and they're running through different kinds, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. Yes, I've experimented with that, blah, blah, blah. And I was very much a heroin addict and an alcoholic. So I was very much a downers dude. But they were asking, did you ever do meth? And I had said, no, because I've never done crystal meth, smoked it, shot it, or anything like that. However, I have taken methamphetamines, like Ritalin and shit like that. So, in pill form. And they were like, well, that's, and they thought that I said that afterwards, that they were like pointing at that as denial, and that I was playing something off like it wasn't as bad when it really is. And I fought with them on it because I was like, well, that's not the same. And they're like, yeah, no, but it is. Because they thought that I was playing it down and like I was lying to myself. And after a while, like, I finally just let it go because I'm like, all right, you may have something there. But months down the line, and even today, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, no, I'm going to call bullshit that taking Ritalin pills is not the same as smoking meth. It's not. You can think, well, technically you did methamphetamines. Yeah, okay. You can check the box off, but it's two totally different things. But don't have that argument while you're trying to get better. Like, don't let it build a resentment that might interfere with you learning some shit and getting better. If that makes sense. That's what I would recommend doing. Not, I had a hard time with them calling addiction a disease. Like, I've still just a disease. I'm like, maybe a disorder, maybe like a disorder in your brain, which is why you're different from other people, because it's in your head, but it's not a fucking disease. Yes, I get why you're calling it a disease, but the thing is, they started calling it a disease because people couldn't understand why alcoholics didn't just stop, like in the 50s and the 40s and shit. They couldn't, so they had to call it a disease so that people could kind of understand that it acts similarly. But technically, it's not a disease like cancer. Like, I was really, and the thing about that is that when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter what you call it, whether it's a disease or a disorder or a brain thing. Like, you can label it whatever you want. The problem is that you're in fucking rehab, man. There's a problem. Nobody ends up in rehab because they're on a lucky streak. It's not, you didn't, my luck's been bad. That's why I got caught so many times. No, it's habitual. You've got an issue. There's an issue. So it's, when you're in the middle of it, that's why I say don't dwell on trying to win. Don't try to win an argument when you're trying to get better. I think that's the thing, is to quit trying to be right when you need to focus on lying to yourself and to others and the delusion that you're in when you've been addicted for so long. One of the biggest benefits of rehab is the break from the drugs that make you think things. To where you start, using your actual unfiltered thoughts again. That's like so regardless of what materials are given to you that you're supposed to study, work on, process or whatever, just the time away is good. This is why sometimes people who get hooked on drugs and they don't go to rehab, they go to jail or they go to prison for a couple of years. That actually does help them, and it's because of the break. However, rehab's better than prison, obviously, but there's lots of resources, a lot of things you can do. And so use the break wisely. Like, use the time. You can use it to form new habits. Read a lot. Read a shit ton. Just doesn't matter what you're reading. Just read. Try not to watch too much TV because there's the county run program that I was in, people like you watched way too much TV. There was just TV on all the time. It was and I instead took my time and read books. I read about 30 plus books in 5 months. 5 or 6 months I read over 30 books. So I really tried to, it actually cured me being in that county run rehab. It cured me of watching regular TV because they had cable. They had like basic cable on at all times, like the same reruns over and over again. And I couldn't watch commercials anymore, and I couldn't watch stupid TV. It was so bad. So I just, I think it's really why it has to be a really good show, or I just won't watch it. I don't like to commit to it, and I don't like to watch TV anymore. And I think it's because of rehab. But yeah, use it to, get used to working out. Like, enjoy exercise again, because it'll help. It helps you feel better, and it's gonna, and it's hard to maintain any kind of exercise once you get out and you're back, and you've got no supervision, nobody to hold you accountable. That's the word I was looking for. So yeah, use it. Find new hobbies, because you're gonna need something to fill the void of doing drugs and making the money and finding the way to pay for the drugs and getting drugs. Like eats up a lot of your time. You take that away, you got to fill it with something. So use that time wisely. Also, one other thing is try to keep perspective, because when you're around some of the worst people or people at their worst, they may not be the worst people, but they are at their absolute worst when they're starting off. So in rehab, you're not going to be around, you yourself are not at your best, and they're not at their best either. There's a lot of friction, and there's going to be a lot of things that come up, and just try to keep your perspective that it's just temporary. Like things that really make you like somebody having one more pillow than you, or something really dumb. Some kind of issue at the cafeteria, you're not able to get a second cup of coffee. They only give you 1 cup of coffee at a time. Like shit like that. It sounds dumb now. That it's like, why would that bother me? It does, because you're in there, you're bored, and you need your brain's looking for things to focus on and keep its attention. So little nitpicky bullshit becomes really big issues, and then later when you get out, you're like, why did that bother me so much? So keep that in mind, that it's all relative, that it's not really a big issue. Try to keep perspective that it's just a temporary thing, and it's just something that's going to annoy you, but it's not the end of the world. It's real easy to get caught up in nitpicky bullshit, because you're projecting the frustration of you having to be there onto some little small thing. And I think that's all I had. I wrote down don't get too confident, but I think I mentioned that earlier. But yeah, don't get overly confident. Stay humble. Like stay grounded, because that's when it's later. You're probably not going to relapse in those first couple of months. It's later, once you start getting into the grind and you're off your pink cloud of sobriety, and it's just not as fun anymore, and you start getting into the grind in those first 6 months. Just realize that you've got to keep working, and you got to stay grounded. But those are the tips that I came up with. If you visited my podcast and listened to this because you are going to rehab, and you had any other questions that I did not cover in my little stint talking about it today, just you can email me at stillsoberpod@gmail.com. Any kind of questions, I'll do the best that I can. Realize that I'm luckily not a rehab expert. I've been to 2 as opposed to many, and that's good. So I hope that helped. I hope you have a good week. This has been Yes, I'm So Sober. I'm John Rabin. Thank you guys for joining me. I will see you next time. Later.
Red wine, a little smoke, a whole lot of loving. That's all I need. Make it through the night. Cold beer, cold shoulder, just 1 glass of whiskey. That's all it takes. Push me over the line. I'll knock 'em down.